morning. I'm Richard Miller, and you're at Never Not Here. We're on our new Hangout formula, and Hangout is Google Plus, or Google has always given us such amazing gifts, and so the Hangout is a multi-person video chat room, and I want to take this pretty far. So far, I haven't really ventured into 5 and 6 and 9 people. And I don't know, that's a different kind of a conversation, and it really needs to be moderated because everyone wants to get a chance to speak, and then somehow it can't be just a free-for-all either. And who knows what we can do with this. We can have periodic meetings between groups of people that can listen to each other and hear each other and receive each other. And that could be of value. We find that when we share with another, somehow our heart is eased, and we feel some growth or some release of pressure. I've been in Australia. I've been staying with my beautiful friend Rena, and Rena's introduced me to a lot of people that have been her friends for years on the Eckhart Tolle TV forum. And so here we are again. We're going to do a couple more great people that we'd met from Eckhart Tolle. And so let me introduce Susan Gordan. So, hello, Susan.
Hi, Richard. Hello.
So you've been a friend of Eckhart Tolle since the beginning, I believe.
I have been a friend of Eckhart Tolle. I've followed him and his teaching since Oprah. A friend of mine just came over and said, "Oh, there's this teacher. He's, wonderful. He's going to be on Oprah. It's a worldwide webcast." And I was like, "Really? I wasn't looking for a teacher." Oh, okay. Well, worldwide webcast. I want to see what he's selling, because if it's going worldwide, I'm already pretty sure I'm not going to like it. And he's selling something. And then I read the book before watching the webcast, because I like to know what I'm dealing with. It doesn't sound very good, does it? But that's how it happened. I read the book. Anyway, I did at least think, this is going to be big. I want to see it. I mean, that was really basic. I'm kind of changing things slightly, the way I just tend to do. That he's selling something. Because anything that's mass is already suspect in my mind, and there it is, So since then. And I didn't join the community right away. I was not the least bit interested. I've never been in a chat room or a forum or answered questions on, I wasn't interested. And then I jumped in. I didn't forget, introduce yourself. Why would anybody want to introduce themselves? No, it didn't even occur to me that you should do that. And I just jumped in, and then I was stuck. Boom.
You were addicted, huh? That's a great subject. Before I continue with it, I'll just introduce our other participant, Giri Samudra. And hi, Giri.
Hello, hi. I'm Giri. We all met at the Eckhart Tolle Forum, and it's wonderful to be here to talk to all of you and to be with you. Wonderful. Thank you.
And Giri's speaking to us from England, and I guess you're a medic or a doctor. Is that correct?
Yes, my profession is medicine. I'm a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
For a certain time in the day.
We think about our own lives, and then we read things, and By the way, the Oprah thing, I watched almost all the Oprah sessions myself with Eckhart Tolle, and I don't know, I was just thrilled that that type of a message was going out to so many people. You know, maybe at the time I was not following Eckhart Tolle. I had read his book several years before. But I mean, I was just thrilled that somebody actually was taking this message and putting it out in a really big way, and actually the sharings and so on. Maybe I even judged them. Maybe I even thought that they were kind of like beginners and stuff. But it really touched my heart so much that people would actually be, actually 1 million people were watching these type of questions and these type of responses and even though I judged the way Oprah handled it, that she always kind of had to have the last word, or somehow she was putting Eckhart Tolle's words through her mouth.
I did too.
Whatever this.
Who didn't?
But I mean, I just totally loved it. I'm from Chicago. Oprah was in Chicago. Like I was in Chicago at the time. I was thinking, oh, our hometown girl is really enjoying this, and I was totally loving it.
It was amazing. And, when Eckhart first wrote the book, The Power of Now, I read it, I heard it in an interview. He said he kind of meant this book to be for a select group of advanced seekers, is what he thought. And he never expected, to have such a vast audience. So really, for him, he's just rolling with the flow. It's only us who are just getting so excited, I think.
That's so interesting because I didn't know that, Giri. I didn't know that, but
yeah,
I know that after I saw the program, and I remember someone asked Eckhart a question about Oprah, kind of along the lines of, what we were saying, Richard, about I judged Oprah for blah, blah. Of course, I know exactly what you mean, but I would never actually believe what I thought. I mean, it's like, okay, so what? It's Oprah. That's what she does. It's her profession. Or whatever, it's self-talk, but it's also like, you got to be kidding. Like, what do you expect of Oprah? She's just a person. She called him a prophet. I mean, she was so touched, and she's interviewing him. And
she was authentic.
She was authentically her, exactly.
Yes.
And so Eckhart said, once he said, oh, Oprah's a nice person. And it's like, yeah, great. What's wrong with that? So the thing is that I would tell people, friends of mine who were on, really, they are advanced. They are. And they would say, oh yeah, but that's for beginners. And it's like, I am a beginner. Oh, how many years? I am a beginner. Hello. And when I meet people on Eckhart Tolle TV, Giri and Richard, and Rena knows this too, the people who are there, they are advanced. That's what advanced looks like. That's my opinion anyway. I am a beginner. They're advanced.
Let's talk about advanced because
let's talk about advanced. Really,
we absorb things, right? We read things, we look at things, we seek out things. We believe that we could put some kind of distinctions on our experiences that will help us. If we have certain distinctions, in other words, we modify our interpretation of how life is going and how life should go and how the lives of others go. And we look at, what could be different about this moment, right? And a lot of that is kind of like somehow receiving it's just typical. People watch television, but they don't put on television shows. They watch it. People read spiritual books, but they don't write spiritual books, right? And then somehow they're advanced. People get what they call advanced knowledge and advanced, and they can actually have advanced feelings and so on, but somehow those advanced feelings don't seem to happen in their own life structure, in their own relationships, in their own business, in their own job. in their own friendship circles. Somehow they're so advanced that their friendship circles and their relatives don't keep up with them, right? Whatever that means, you know. And somehow we get away from expression. You know, we said so many beautiful things when we met on our testing a couple of days ago. We were testing our all systems were go, you know, and we were saying that what is it when we meet someone that you know, in a circle of friends, and we, you know, we don't know what to say because it seems like we're supposed to be saying something called small talk, right? Small talk, and we're not very good at small talk because we're only good with the experts or with people that kind of speak in the way we speak. But what I'm trying to say, I guess, in a long-winded way, is like, what do we learn from our own engagement? Whereas this expertise comes more from just standing back and disengaging. And what, you know, what can we really learn from disengaging? I don't know. Who wants to take that one?
Susan, yourself?
I'm looking at you, Giri.
I mean, part of what we're doing here is, well, I have two issues with the discussion that we have at the moment. Is it's not definition. When you say advanced and beginner, you're making a qualification of a process, of an engagement, of a beginning and an end point. And the whole purpose of this teaching is transformation in this moment, and not even the transformation, no, the potential for transformation in this moment is what the teaching holds. And to test that, you need to, well, I needed to let go of the thought that I need to do this, this, and that in order to be at peace. And that's one of the most subtlest, unexamined patterns or mental formulations that kept going in my mind. I wasn't aware of it, you know. It was mostly based on spiritual rewards. So having peace to a certain extent from having done certain techniques, certain diets, certain methods, certain self-inquiry processes, which would give a lot of release, but it would build up automatically without me realizing a process within myself, where the technique was reinforced. So in my being, in my body, I could feel that the technique works. But the radicalness of this teaching is that you have to go beyond the technique. And as long as there's no ease, you will not get it. And it's slowly percolating to me. You know, that is, so I don't see a distinction, and I'm not saying this out of arrogance. I don't see it as advanced and beginner. I see it in terms of depth. So does a person have depth in spiritual practice, and a person have depth in spiritual wisdom? And those are the two distinctions I make.
Yeah, you can know if the practice is working. In other words, if the practice is actually taking you into another kind of a space. But that assumes that, you know, being in that other space is necessary, or that it's desirable, or that you know, we're all assuming that we should live in a peaceful state more and more. And then can we question that assumption, or is that true? Of course, if you assume that you should be in some certain state and you're not, that's stressful. And then I mean, anytime you give a model of something and say it could be this way, well, most people are going to say, oh yeah, it could be, but it ain't right now, right? It's not that way now. It's so that in one way you're modeling something that you know, that's a positive thing, and in another way, exactly at the same time, you're modeling the opposite, because for most people they're not there; they're wherever they are now. And isn't that more spiritually? I don't know what. That's like if we say, right here, right now is all there is, and it's the meaning of my life, and who I am is right here, right now. Well, then the way I am right here, right now, is also the way it is, or the way it appears for me, let's say, and then somehow to bring people to sink deeper and deeper into probably the way it appears for them, because is of some value. I mean, have you ever questioned whether spiritual practices?
I do, yes, I do, very much. As I was saying before, to me it is to do when I realized there was a central point about 2 years ago. I was very rigid with my practice for about 2 years, and it was daily, rigorous, no breaks, no, nothing should disturb. But then that itself was very rigid, it wasn't fluid. And there was a point when, I don't know whether it was Eckhart or somebody, when I heard that a large part of being in the now is to going past technique. A technique can give you a taste. It certainly gave me a lot of taste, but to actually depend on techniques, we've lost it again. And for that to sink in, it took a little time for me. I'll just say one more thing with what you were saying, Richard, about people being focused and doing things and going there and having a practice and a routine and a study and deepening. All of this, I don't know, for me, pain body is actually physical. It's physical and a little bit emotional, and I feel it on the energetic level. It's a very uncomfortable sensation. And when I access it, or when it kind of comes out, and when I become present with it, there is a massive release, and that release, that mini awakening, that process of release itself is very pleasurable, if I'm making sense. Not the feeling of the pain body, the feeling of dissociation from the pain body. Those many moments when you kind of dissociate, when you step back, when you disidentify. And it happens, and you keep needing to do it. And when I did that, each time that happened, so for example, gaining insights and deepening process itself, that itself is an addictive process. If I'm making sense. I don't know if I'm making sense. So there are two attachments that happen, I realized in myself. One was to practice and technique. Nothing wrong with that, but to be aware that there can be an attachment to practice and technique. And second thing was a very genuine thing that happens and is a very good thing. But paradoxically, the mind can attach to that as well, which is basically spiritual awakening. And to want that feeling, to want that release, to want that extraordinary peace that arises when you disidentify in real terms value. I'm not talking about some kind of a mental phenomenon. This happened. And then once I dissociated from that aspect, a further deepening of body awareness happened to me. So maybe I'm waffling now, I should stop.
Were you making a distinction between thinking and being? Is that what you were talking about?
No.
Okay. I did not hear it.
What I was saying, Susan, was that, in moments of intense self-inquiry or doing an intense meditation technique, or in the midst of a huge pain body argument or an ego identification, and you step back and disidentify, in that process, that mini awakening that happens, it's an intensely peaceful feeling. It is, in a way, it is a pleasurable feeling. And what I was saying was that there can become an attachment to that as well, to the spiritual process itself. The genuine release, the genuine spiritual release that has happened, I formed an attachment to that in the beginnings. Can you hear me, Susan?
there is something that's very basic that is only what Eckhart Tolle talks about. I mean, he does not talk about anything else, and that is how everything, no matter what it is, whatever you call it, it happens only in this moment, and it is only accepting that, realizing that, accepting whatever it is that's happening, even if it's the echo arising out of Giri's kitchen, which is, it's fine. I just have to talk to myself, and I do that anyway. It's all what it's all about. And and I think this is what you might have been saying, but which is when you are present and you accept it, you feel you're in touch with peace. That's like the beginning in my opinion, but I'm fine with just that, because whatever else is behind that will just happen. I'm pretty sure we're probably on the same topic, because that's all we ever talk about. So how can we go off on a different topic? I just thought today, it was just like...
Sorry, that was just me.
That's okay. That, in fact, Tom, I love Tom. Tom, I shouldn't be mentioning names here, but we're just friends, right? And he's one of them. He's right. Of course, we're all right. When we give our explanations, it's the explanations that are different, and you can hardly help give one that it doesn't tie something down or evoke something entirely different than it's coming from in terms of images or whatever in the other person. We are always, I realize it for myself. I agree with Tom. I have to tell him sometime. Every time I agree. I have to tell him I agree with him on that. I'm always present. We're all always present. Presence. The presence that we are is always there. And Eckhart Tolle is just pointing out that the ultimate importance of just like making that conscious. It's there no matter what's happening in this moment. It's there. And so I'm present. Like I am present now, and someone could look at me and say, oh God, she's so like not. Sorry, I am. I mean, I won't argue it. I am. And then there's something else that happens then when I see how I'm not aware of it. So it's about first becoming aware of it, and then the rest is kind of just takes care of itself.
Presence has a certain signature, right? Because the opposite of presence is kind of like obsessed or concentrated on obligations and urgencies and projects and how to make a change. That I need a change. The idea that I need to change. I mean, that's also in spiritual practices. There's an idea that I need to change, or that I could change, or that there's an opportunity to be different from this moment. And all these things, the signature of presence somehow doesn't have very much urgency to it, or it doesn't have a to-do list, or it doesn't have, and you can still have a lot of obligations and go through those obligations and be present. But the signature of presence, I've kind of made a definition, and Rena and I use a definition or a signature that we actually prefer to saying presence, and we just call it the open space of good feeling. Mm-hmm. The open space of good feeling doesn't really have a lot of anxiety in it. It has very little or none. And then people say just stay in presence, and what your anxiety is gone, or you could say it the other way around. Just drop your anxiety, and you'll be in presence. But we just call it something way simpler. We call it the open space of good feeling, and we all can feel a contraction or a worry or a concern, or you can call it prudence. You can call it so many things, right?
Well,
But
that
these are all, in a way, these are all overlays on what's happening. And they're kind of interpretive overlays. And so then we've been told, and we've been experimenting, that it's really easy to manage the open space of good feeling, because a positive thought makes a positive feeling, right? It's like a 100% ironclad guarantee. And a negative thought makes a negative closed feeling. And so then lately I've been saying, like, a human is like a piano. And the sounds that come out of this piano are emotions and moods, right? And one of them could be the open space of good feeling. And the keys, like, are the white keys and the black keys, are the negative thoughts and the positive thoughts, right? And the chords you play. And so then that's,
Richard,
you
how
know,
do you keep that what you're proposing? I mean, an interesting thing is that on the forums these days, recently, most of the conversation is about conversation. And also, a very interesting thing that was brought up was the pleasure trap. And you reminded me of that. I have to admit that I tend to respond to what I'm hearing and talking, now that I don't talk to myself so much all by myself in my head. I can be more quiet when I'm not talking or hearing. Anyway, that's a sidebar. But yeah, the pleasure principle. So how do you take the open space of good feeling, and I think you do, to watch the Republican debates if you're an American? You are. I don't know if you watch anything like that down there, but there's a comparable thing in Australia too. They're no different, and England. So how do how does that translate? I mean, that's maybe where the dissonance comes in. Once you really know that is the place where you live. You live.
so then I'd ask you to clarify a little bit, okay, what you meant by the pleasure trap. And then I think I understand what you mean by, there are occurrences and incidents in your life that do resonate through the body as a closure, like something you reject. And then you're asking, what do you do about that? Do you just try to discard that, or do you just try to work through it? But tell me first what you mean by the pleasure trap. Is that an identification with the open space of good feeling, or is that a running after something that you're going to call satisfaction, or what are you referring to with the pleasure trap?
Well, actually, it's not my idea. It was somebody else's. Noticed this on the forum, and it has been being talked about. What is exactly the pleasure trap? So, is there such a thing as a pleasure trap? And when you talk about good feelings and the open space of good feelings, although I know what you mean, and yes, of course, better to have an open space with good feelings in it than bad feelings, but are feelings what are included in that open space, good and bad, or are they what I want? I want good feelings, or do I want to be the space? Do I want that to be in touch with that deeper part? So in a way, when I asked you that question, I was really asking not what I feel. It's not what I feel coming at me from outside. It's the space that I am. Can I take it all? And I guess I feel like that space that you're talking about, that you're referring to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about it, in your understanding, is that space that awareness arises. The space is just there. And that has no particular feeling. Feeling is not important to it one way or another. Opposites are not important to it. Values, value good, value bad. That happens when that connection is made between thinking, between acting, between obligations between life on earth and that. The pleasure trap then would be seeking the good feelings base versus avoiding the bad feeling base.
Okay, my answer to that would be that good feelings and bad feelings, both of them are probably weightless. They don't really exist. But somebody that believes that bad feelings are real and then good feelings are real, and then they believe, okay, these two things are real and we have to take them both as they come, right? And then my bad feeling, why should I deny my bad feeling? Because it's really happening to me and that's what's up for me right now. And I think what I'm discovering is that there's really, there's no substance to a bad feeling, except that it's fueled by a bad thought, you know. And even if you say those Republicans are jerks, they're taking this country down into a terrible separate place where so many people are rejected and labeled, and you know, and you reject that, and you know that your non-acceptance of that, and I'm not saying accepting means to condone the whole thing or to join the club. Accepting just means something else, and we have to discover what accepting means. Okay, you're saying that, I'm saying that the good feelings and the bad feelings, neither of them are really real, and maybe there's no such thing as a good feeling, open space, a good feeling. We know there's such a thing as a bad feeling because we can contract, and we can feel limited and scared and resigned, and all kinds of things. We know we can feel that. Let's just say a good feeling, I don't know what a good feeling is. It's just the absence of those bad feelings, right? If it's the absence of a contraction. So actually a good feeling is nothing. A good feeling is the space that you're talking about. And perhaps, how about that? You like that one?
Oh,
Can I add? The way I look at it is both bad and good feelings are the same thing. So they're both the same tree. It's coming from the tree of feeling. And the feelings have many branches. Bad and good happen to be one of them. So they're both essentially the same thing. It's also related and involved with the mind in terms of the mind seeking the pleasure and having an aversion to pain. They're both the same thing. So the process is the same. It looks vastly different. And without knowing, we are conditioned to go towards pleasure, whereas they're both the same things. When you take out, well, when I let pleasure and pain, both of them to just be as they are, the content outside is still there, but there is no inner content. And that leads to a lot of contentment. Susan, previously you were saying about we're present now, we're here now, there is no process to go, we're always present. And it's true in one level, but to talk about, well, my nature is inclusivity. I look and see how I can include everything that's around me. And I've heard Eckhart talk about this once before. Spiritual awakening and spiritual movement has two forms. And I've kind of realized this before. There is an avenue for that intense process and that direction and that goal-oriented. You have a plan, you go towards that. And essentially what I talk about that is more of a seeking quality. And what you are talking about is more of a finding quality, or rather being quality.
what quality? What?
Finding quality. Finding quality, and which is more of a being quality. And here again, there is an intense alertness that is needed. Oh, this is a personal process. I have known that when I lose that intense alertness, I slip from presence. I'm still present at a level, but my awareness of being present has slipped because I've lost that alertness. So I feel that I need both the processes, the relaxed attitude of being where I know deep down that I'm there already, but also the alertness and watching in case something slips in. And that's the way I marry these two processes. And I personally feel both are valid, but to actually conclusively say, don't do anything, you're always present, you're right there right now, I feel is a way of doing disservice to that process, an intense process of directional awareness and process and technique that happens. That is one. And two, how I came about with that flow.
It's all right.
How I came about with that kind of a thing is there is a parallel movement. There's actually a lot of parallel movement with present moment awareness kind of a thing. There is a movement run by a couple who completely discount any of the spiritual aspects of awakening and spirituality and say, now is just here. We're just body and we're just mind and we're just talking to you here and now. And there is a huge following and they justify it and they propound it and they speak about it and there's a huge following worldwide. And they talk about mainly relationships. And I felt it was incomplete. And I felt it was doing disservice to the depth of the potential teaching that can happen with present moment awareness.
Okay, one point is that we're talking about just present moment awareness. Present moment awareness in a way is a relaxing. So then, be here now. How do I do it? I have to just let go of what I called my urgencies and my concerns and things that are actually more interpretive. You know, how I interpret this moment is that I need something. I need to do something. I've got special conditions. I've got to follow up on, and so then we're in a way saying that when we relax from that, we're in a more open space, and it is a good feeling. That's how we can recognize it, you know. And then Giri's also saying, but I feel that's incomplete. That there should be some kind of an alertness there, right? And I don't know if that's a more masculine thing. That I can feel that too, you know.
I know there are degrees. I understand what he's saying. Yeah, I agree with that.
So what is that alertness? Let's just try to discover what he's meaning by that alertness. I would say that's kind of like a masculine thing where, like, in one way, it's like our mind saying, well, I want to really do this. You know, I don't want to just let everything through the gates, which would happen if I was just relaxed. Yeah. I want to kind of aim myself toward higher principles, let's say. And so I want to be alert to those higher principles, let's say. And then he was mentioning maybe a couple that's teaching, like, let's just say that there's just here in this moment, there's now, there's our minds, there's our emotions, and let's forget all the spiritual overlay. And in a way, I mean, that spiritual, I mean, you put words to a feeling and you call it spirituality, and but yet it's just a feeling, right? The words aren't really what it is, you know. And so then, in a way,
the human organism, a feeling, a negative feeling or a positive feeling. They're both part of our organism. Our body, mind, emotional organism has feelings, positive and negative. The spiritual part.
Also, Giri was saying that they're not that different. The positive or the negative are the same mechanism. In other words, it's part of the organism.
Experience, they are the same in the fact that they're equal. They're equal, that kind of sameness. However, I agree with you, and this is where the pleasure trap comes in. we also are happier, and we like to be happy rather than unhappy when we have positive feelings and not negative feelings, or when we have positive experiences and not negative experiences, or we can't look at that. It brings up something bad, so let me not look at it because I can't bear it. I don't like those feelings that come up, So in that sense, am I agreeing with you, Giri?
I don't think we are disagreeing or agreeing. I think we are exploring.
Well, am I talking to what you were talking about? Because if you'd like to amend it, go right ahead.
Yes, you're agreeing. You're absolutely agreeing. Okay, the way I would. Yes, you are right, Susan.
No, that was good. That was good, and maybe you could add because Richard, he had what I thought was like, this is a perfect definition of the masculine quality, feminine quality, and that you brought it to the forum. Of course, you could never tell if anybody noticed it, but I did. And
the masculine principle.
Yeah, the principles, because all of this is part of that duality, the feelings, negative, positive, the male, the female.
See, I don't think masculine has a negative feeling and feminine has a positive feeling.
No, I mean you're part of the duality. I don't think masculine is negative either. God forbid, don't let that get out there. Masculine is beautiful, but it's part of the duality of the world. The masculine.
So in that sense, absolutely, I agree. The negative and the positive are the same.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back in then. I'll go back in because we're saying the negative and the positive are the same. But, I would say the mechanism, we said we have a body, the body has feelings. The mechanism of the negative and the positive is exactly the same. And what is that mechanism? It's the story that we tell ourselves. Every time I would say that if we're running with a story, and we're building it and padding it and finding proofs to it, we're building up our anxiety level and we're building up our closure. In other words, we're closing down more and more and more around a certain point. And to say that is that's part of a duality or something, that's not part of a duality. It's just running with a story. There's no duality. I mean, duality is to say that they're equal in the sense that they both have validity. They don't have any validity. Negative feelings or positive feelings. The only thing is negative feelings are running with a negative story, and they close our mind and they close our body. And if you want to have your body closed, great. You can get a cancer, you can get a heart condition, you can have a stroke, you can do all kinds of things that your body will do really good when you squeeze it. You squeeze all the processes in it. And if that's what you think is an equal part of duality, and you should just run with whatever is. Of course, Giri will like that because at least his income won't suffer. He'll have more patience, right? His altruistic side will suffer because he hates to see suffering, but his monetary side will like it because, the hospital is making a good profit this year. And so they can pay him, right?
Doctors need patients, absolutely.
But I'm saying that going with a good feeling is just managing your stories, managing the way you run with a fearful story. And fear sells, right? And and fear sells to our own temptation machine, whatever our temptation machine is, and that's the machine that decides which story is important to us. And the fearful ones are like on the top of the list, right? Because those are the ones I got to handle. And the pleasurable ones, like going to the Maldives or something like that, that'll have to wait until I pay off my debts or something like that. Even if that's not even pleasurable, going to the Maldives. It is one time or two times, or sometimes people get hooked to the beach and they want to go often. But tell me.
That's the thing.
Tell me, Susan.
Pleasure cells also. Diversion cells. Feeling good is a big trap. But what you're talking about, the mind and the story, that is true. That is so true. And that is really a very big thing in Eckhart Tolle's teaching, because that's like illusion on duality. Everybody says that it's all an illusion. That's not quite right. I mean, yes, true, it's transient. It's not the same as it's all an illusion. But certainly that story, the suffering is optional. You can pretty quickly, it seems to me, get that and start working on the process, which is dropping the story, the added suffering. And so if you tend to see things negatively, I'm raising my hand here. I lived a whole life like that, or a very lot of it, where I tended to have a negative self-image anyway. I never had particularly a negative image of other people, except as reflected, projected, whatever. But it's better to look at the goods, the positive side of things. It feels better. It is better. It's at least a good attitude to have. But all of that is on top of floating over, is kind of like floating on top of the reality that's most important, which is the quiet space where that exists. Better to have happiness existing there. And even if it's a negative feeling rising up, that will just take its proper place. Kind of. The pleasure, that goes back to the pleasure trap, which is I always talk about whatever's on my mind. That was on my mind today. I was reading the thread. There I am, just reflecting what's on my mind. So, I agree with you, but I think there's
I'm not too clear on the
illusion on the illusion. It's the real illusion.
I'm not too clear about what is a pleasure trap, because like at one time Giri was saying our mind is set for seeking pleasure, and I'd say that's not true. Our mind is set for seeking relief, whatever that relief might be.
Relief, right?
And
or
then,
comfort, and you can do a pleasure.
Relief could come through the pain body, because like the mind does attach itself to what we were calling Eckhart Tolle, people call the pain body, and that somehow is a relief. I'm saying, and even your negative self-image. You said you don't tend to think you didn't in the past tend to think negative of other people and stuff, but you had a negative self-image. I was saying that that's a relief for you. Because of your negative self-image, you didn't have to go out and risk anything. You didn't have to go out and perform. You didn't have to go out and express. You didn't have to go out and take a risk, because your negative self-image would beat you back down, and that was a relief for you, because at that point in your life, you had a fear of being judged, and so then you became your own self-judge. I'm saying that was a relief, and in a way, that was your pleasure. And what do you say about that? I mean, that's maybe a rough way to look at it, but
you're right. I mean, I personally think that either a positive or a negative self-image has its benefits and its deficits, both of them. Personally, I prefer having just let self-image part go. I honestly don't really care anymore, and I don't beat myself up, or I don't accept other people's criticism. I listen to them. I might even act on them. I might say, is that true? Maybe it is. And even try, sometimes it happens, I say, oh my God, you're right. But that's it. It's like, having said that, I just keep on going. Just keep trucking.
You can feel into it. You can feel if it has any truth or validity for you. It's not really a truth. It's just something that you're hanging on to, and it's kind of like a belief about yourself, is your self-belief. But you said now I don't have any self-image, but all of us have self-images.
I didn't really say that. If I did, I meant it. I didn't mean it.
All of us have some self-image, and I would say it's wise to somehow manage it and somehow see that it's open and opening, let it be open and let it be unknown, my self-image, and it's there for sure. And and let me take a bigger bite out of life, right? And then a lot of fears will come up, sure. Because my self-image is saying, that's too big of a bite. I can't take that big a bite of life. and let me try it, And all three of us are trying it today, just by talking to each other and kind of not knowing who's going to say what, and if we'll look good or we'll look bad, or if we'll have anything to say that's worthwhile or not, or maybe when we look at this recording, we'll think, "Oh my God, did I say that?" Or I was unkind to those people. Maybe I was unkind. And I might say that.
Are you used to that yet, Richard? Are you used to looking at yourself and saying, "Oh my God, is that me? Who's that?" It's kind of cool. I like it.
Yeah, maybe there's an immense value just in that, to take an honest look at ourselves, because it's so hard. We say that the other people are our reflection, right? And what, even on the forum or something like that, okay, I tend to think that the forum we're talking, for those that are not familiar with Eckhart Tolle forum, it's where people type in, we type our reaction to people's questions and people's comments, and we comment on comments and stuff like that. But in a way, it's less hard in it, because everything is more or less concept, right? We're having a battle of the concepts. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think there's a lot of joy in that, right?
I don't want him to talk because I don't understand him. But on the other hand, if he's talking, I don't have to. So.
It brings us to that point, how we started, and we were talking about that relaxed approach, and then the alertness. And Richard, you mentioned the masculine principle. How we started off at this time, at this moment, was to not have an agenda. It was relaxed, it was open, and that I would be akin to the feminine. There was only an intention, and the intention was to come in and to share. And I have the advantage because I was stepping back over the past few minutes and just observing both of you, and the ideas and the concepts and the concerns that were brought when we first started. For example, the pressure trap, or the positive and the negative experience is like a stimulus, is like an external alertness that came into our field of intention, which was to be here and share, which we are doing still. So that's happening on the background, but at the moment I'm providing an external masculine stimulus, which is a concept, an idea, words which are directed, which are pointing to something. And if I'm talking directly now, because if you're not careful, as my words are coming out, you're forming internal images and concepts. And what am I going to tell him next? Or what can I speak about next? Now, that is an immediate reaction. So an internal alertness is absolutely essential and a must. In that sense, I meant that it's a must. And I'm giving a very crude example over here, in the sense that we have to maintain alertness for our minds not to come in and say, "Oh, I can tell that next," or "I can comment on that next." So yes, that relaxed state of awareness and the intention of coming here, which is the feminine principle, but also the masculine principle. While I'm speaking, internally you shouldn't be reacting, because if you are reacting, then we won't be communicating. And how we were speaking about both the negative and the positive being different. And then I remember, Richard, you had disagreed, but then in the process of communicating, you actually said that well, it came about in discussion. I don't know if you said it or Susan said it. The negative self-image can actually turn into positive. So that is a relief that was being mentioned. And then the positive can also become negative. So essentially they can invert each other depending on the way we look. And in that sense, I was saying it comes from the same place, but it's perceived differently. And the pleasure trap, I think it has the answer in itself, trap. So we feel trapped. So in that seeking for pleasure, in that attachment to pleasure, and aversion from pain, which is the same thing as what I'm saying. So attachment to pleasure and aversion from pain is the same internal process, but it's perceived very differently on the outside. I don't know if I came across, Richard, does that make sense?
Being perceived by other people, or perceived as what manifests differently. They're the same thing, but the manifestation is different. Perceived different, it is different. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the perception is different internally.
Yeah.
I'm not quite going in that direction, with my thought process. In other words, like, for instance, I said negative self-image as a reward, but I didn't really say it could turn positive. I just said that a kind of a stern way to look at our lives is that everything that's really taking place is what we're most committed to, even when we don't know that. In other words, when we're suffering, somehow it might be our commitment to that suffering. What keeps the pain body in place. Somehow we're committed to saying that we want to honor the things that did not work in our life. The abuses. We want to honor the abuses in our life more than we want to honor this moment. And maybe this moment is a mundane moment, right? And I was saying, in the case of negative self-image, somehow we have a fear to step out and take a bigger bite out of life. And so then we use our negative self-image to hold us back and hold us from our true potential as a human being. And then that seems positive. In other words, we're getting a reward for that because our fear is being rewarded and our fear is not being pushed to the limit. It's being coddled, and it's being, we put our fear in a baby crib and put it to bed and say, look, we're not going to stress you out, fear. We'll stay here and we'll just be real humble people. And we, anyhow, what can we do? What can we say? Who are we? We have no education. We don't speak the language very well. Whatever our negative self-images are about ourselves, I've never finished what I start. Whatever our parents told us that was no good about us or something.
Sorry, is that what you meant? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I meant, and I'm just saying that there's really a reward to everything. And if we take an honest look at that, then we can say, well, gee, that's not equal. Positive and the negative are not equal. The negative is just kind of like our workaround to a life that we've kind of given up on, a life that we've kind of been resigned to say, well, I better stay the way I am, And of course, in one time in human history, there was no talk about crossing over or about it succeeding or about being anything else than you were born into. You were born into being a shoe cobbler, and you would just be a shoe cobbler, and so would your children. Or you were born into being a serf, and you would just be a serf. You'd never thought about, why am I not the noble, and you never had to stress your mind. And then at a certain time, there is a construction of a citizen. You could be a citizen, right? And then what does that mean? I get to participate in life in a different way, in a bigger way. And maybe I can vote, maybe I'll vote somebody in, right? Or maybe I could run for office and I'll be voted in. And well, that's just one example of how life on Earth progresses and how we're in some kind of an evolutionary path, which is not necessarily a biological evolution, but it's a psychological evolution or a social evolution. And much of our spirituality kind of discounts the social evolution and just says, oh, those are all thoughts, and you can just be in peace. And then hocus pocus, we'll call it grace, will fall on you. And if you're a good spiritual boy, and be real quiet, and and do your practices, someday some Shazam will happen, and the grace of your guru will come down on you, and then you can be a guru too. And then, or otherwise, at least you'll be peaceful.
Be a guru too. That's the trap. Maybe we don't call it the pleasure trap. Maybe we call it something else. Let's call it something
The guru
else.
trap. Well, why would you want to be a guru? Because you want to contribute. You want to contribute to life, and you haven't been, damn well you're not contributing to life. Okay, you're taking care of your husband. You're taking care of your kids.
Right.
You were in the PTA once, but they shouted you down.
And
so then you said, no more of that. No more of that business. I mean, it's kind of like, it's just like how we move toward life and how we back off of life. And you can call it a pleasure trap, but I don't know. I think that is total bunk, total and complete bunk, Like, let's say you move toward pleasure and you move toward good feeling. Let's say that something in your body takes you to a place where there's clean air and where the oxygen is strong, You're saying, oh, you're on an oxygen trap, I mean, how ridiculous can it be? It's just your natural reaction to move towards what's right for you and your body and your organism, right?
And what feels good, and it is. You're absolutely right. I would not disagree.
What's wrong with a pleasure trap? I mean, it's just idiocy to talk about that for me. I mean, I would just say that, of course, you move toward, you've got bad feeling and good feeling, and that's a signpost for you to steer your life by.
And take your bad feelings out of my life because they make me feel bad. Yeah. There's that part.
Yeah.
Take your bad feelings and go home. I don't want
I think that the issue was a trap in the sense where you're wanting the pleasure feeling all the time, or you're chasing after the pleasure feeling, which was the trap part of the things. That's the way I read it. That's the way I see it.
Say it again.
There's the wanting of the pleasure, or the seeking of the pleasure.
Because that open space is free of wanting, actually. The space of presence, maybe the space Richard's talking about is different than the space I'm talking about. The space I'm talking about, and I think actually we all are, is free of pleasure and it's free of want. It's free of desires, like for pleasure-seeking desires. It's completely okay, but that is not living in this world. We live in the body. We live in the mind and senses and emotions. We don't have to live in the thinking mind.
Oh, we sure as heck do. So what a denial! That's a crazy denial, We have to think, and to say you're not thinking, and how the heck do you get out the door? How the heck do you handle your bank account? How the heck do you drive a car? We're all thinking, and to deny that we're thinking, I mean, what's the point? I mean, we can be peaceful, and things are on automatic, and we know how to drive while we're talking on the phone, but it's not really a good idea. They even make laws against it.
I'm not even very good at it, so I don't do that. But
I agree with both of you, but I'll just qualify the statement in the sense, presence, there is no desire, there is no suffering, or there's no pain in presence, or the fact that in presence there is no thinking, actually possibly not true. There is pain, there is pleasure, but there is no attachment to either the pleasure or the aversion from the pain. So it is that response to that stimulus, or even the thinking mind, which is always going on, but there is no awareness usually. But in presence, there is the awareness of the thinking mind. So the thinking mind can be going for a run, for a jog, for a walk, doing what it wants, but there's no awareness of the thinking mind. So you're both right. No, we're all right. I think we're all right.
You say that we're saying there's no attachment to the pleasure or the pain. Where, I don't know, in enlightenment, let's say, or something like that. But sure, there's preference. There sure as heck is preference. Call up a spiritual teacher and start to abuse him. He'll hang up on you for sure. I mean, there's certainly preference, and there's certainly attachment to that preference, right? And so then that's baloney too. I mean, why even say it?
Why say what?
Why say that there's no attachment to pleasure and pain? There is.
There is,
That's
of
what
course.
we're made out of. And that's our signpost of how to live. If we didn't have a signpost, if you had no pain in your body, you'd make all kinds of terrible mistakes.
I never said there is no pain.
You would have a sign. You would be missing a signpost that tells you how to live and how to be healthy. You've got to have pleasure and pain, as signposts, indications of what's right. When you're a kid, and let's say when I was a healthy kid and a young man, and I was doing a lot of physical work and a lot of physical activity, I could burn through anything. And I didn't really have signposts that said, don't drink this or don't overindulge in that or don't, because it would all burn out, I could just burn through it. I had that power, right? And so then without those signposts, I made a lot of mistakes.
The pain and the pleasure is there. It is there. It's not that they're not there. In personal experience, when in presence, I found that I'm not too attached to either the pain or the pleasure. It is there, and it's a passing phenomenon when I'm in presence. But when not, I find that I have preferences, yes. Preferences is there, and it's not there in presence for me, personal experience. I don't know about enlightened people. Well.
Okay, I want to ask another question. Let's shift gears a little bit. So let's say we have a worldview, and we pad that worldview every day by our experiences. They either verify our worldview or they tear it down. And then up to a certain point, we're allowing things to tear down because I think, I don't know if it was Giri or Susan that was saying that Giri was saying there was a relief in certain things came apart, or when there was a let go that allowed a relief, and so then so we adopt. We have experiences. Number one, we have experiences. Number two, we interpret them. The interpretation is a story, and that story either adds to our worldview or it subtracts from our worldview, which might be good. We might even be trying to get out of, our worldview might be that it's a terrible place, and we might have come from a country that was strife and war-torn, and we might have all kinds of our worldview that's very heavy-duty, and we're trying to release some of it. So then and so here's my question now. What is it that somehow is the temptation that we're going to adopt some new interpretation, and what is it that tells us that, hey, we're not going to accept this new interpretation, this must be wrong? And how do we manage this story about our life, about who we are, our worldview and where we're in it, who we are in that world?
How do we manage the story? Well, first, Richard, do you think that things that pleasure and the experience of pleasure, the experience of pain, physical pain, experience at all is the same as being attached? It's not. I don't believe you believe that. You said that. I don't believe you believe that. That being attached to pain is the same as the pain. You said that. I don't believe you believe that. Do you believe that?
Let me try to
it's a challenge.
Get back into what you said, being attached. I don't know if I said attached. I was saying, that people have preferences, right? And,
yes.
And I was also saying that people are attached to their pain in the sense that if it gives them something in the end, it gives them some reward that for them is important. And in that case, I was talking about the self-image, and I was that was the one. There could be other pains. I mean, mostly, I don't know what would be another pain you're attached to. You're suffering. You're suffering, and you're abuse. Your memories of abuse could be important to you because it's a story that makes you important in a way, because you had more abuse than the next guy, and so then it's one way you can shine, because and then you dramatize it. I don't know. I mean, in a way, drama, any kind of drama. Maybe this is another story. Any kind of drama is a manipulation, right? Why
Well, that's
would
an
you try to
explanation. It's not necessarily a story. And so I guess if it were me, I'd want to say, and is that a true explanation, or is there some attachment in it? Because for me, attachment is a very key word. It's like, yes, you have opinions. Yes, you have preferences. Yes, you prefer doing this activity over that activity, whatever. There's lots of things. They're fine. They're part of life. It's the attachment that to me is key. And explanations are stories, but they're not the story that's full of attachment. I mean, anything that is not happening right now, using words is creating, not truth. It's a story. It's an explanation. It's an opinion. It's a description. It's a comment.
Okay, an attachment. I suppose sometimes we make rules about our lives, and we'll say, "Never again will I allow this." And then, if we have these ironclad rules, let's call that an attachment. Then,
Yeah, and what happens when you have those kind of things? We all know what happens. Or if we don't, we should think about it. Because what happens when we have ironclad rules? What happens?
Well, what happens is most of the times they're not fulfilled, right? And so then we're always fighting against them and trying to make them, force them on the situation. And
Suffering.
yeah, naturally they're not fulfilled. So then we feel like, oh my God, things are going all wrong, and I have to up my energy level to force more, and so then I'm becoming less popular.
Well, certainly.
No, the question is why? What allows you to choose your story, right? Whether it's attached or whether it's not attached. Even a preference is some light attachment, right? Because that's the way you believe. You believe that must be closest to the truth, if there's such a thing as a truth. But what is it that, I mean, to me, that is what inquiry is, and where the fertile ground of inquiry is. To inquire why I'm choosing this story, and why I'm tempted by this story, and why I'm trying to pad this story. Pad means gather evidence for it and build
Support.
Support for it. Which in effect makes it more and more fixed, right? I'm trying to really fix it. And why don't I just get flexible and just let other stories come in and out, and especially other people's stories, like, okay, look on the forum, the Eckhart Tolle forum, we're so much wanting to put our opinion out and have people somehow adopt it, or at least see the validity of it, or give us some accolades for, oh, that's a really good way you said that. But in another way, we're not really respecting that everybody lives their life by their own interpretations and their own default mechanisms, and they go back to their favorites, and they have their own attachments, let's say, that are these where they're trying to force an old scenario onto a new occasion, and we've done that, and we know we've each done that a million times. We should be able to respect it in the other, but somehow
now, forget done. I do that. Do you? I forget done. I do that all the time. But is it something that's chosen? And does it really matter so much? I mean, is it the most important thing? It's kind of what you gather along in your life. You're born in Chicago, you're born in the United States, you grow up drinking Christian water, whether you practice Christianity or not. That's how you grow up. Probably if you're born wherever Giri was born, in India somewhere, you may grow up drinking Hindu water, or you may grow up drinking Muslim water, or lucky for the Indians, they're all kind of mushed together. They grow up with interesting water. But that forms their story. And if we're talking about anything at all that isn't happening right now, if I tell you what I did today, it's a story. So what's important? How identified I am with it. I think my story is better than, just as you were describing, in fact, right? How identified I am with that story as being the truth. What do you mean that's not what happened today? Well, it was, but it's not the whole picture. It's only the picture I saw of what happened in my space. I do not usually know, I'm aware of the whole space of the experience of what's all around me at any moment. Not completely, although sometimes you are really more so.
Okay, one thing you're saying, Susan, is that we're all soaked in a collective, you know, and if the U.S. we're in Christian waters, you know, and we can know that, but we, you know, if we can see that, we might never, it might never happen that we see the full ramification of that and how deep it goes, how deep those waters run, you know, in our judgments and so on. But somehow, little by little, we can also inquire into that. And that's what I'm saying, that your story and what story you choose and what story you didn't choose, that you were just immersed in. This could be one of the most important inquiries, and it's not just because a story is extraneous or doesn't have anything to do with it. It's because I'm saying a story really totally controls your feelings in every situation, and that's an inquiry too that you can start to notice if it's true or not for you. And when I say story, I'm saying, okay, story that's conscious, but also story that's subconscious or unconscious, like what we were saying, Christian waters. And that to me is the real inquiry, because then that is what allows for presence, you know. When we fall into our default thinking mode, it's because we're in some story that says we need to work it out. We've got problems to work out. And if we were if we could disable some of those stories, diffuse them, we would probably say, hey, we're blessed. We're humans, and we live on God's earth. My God, how great it is, you know? And we can also arrive there by a story, too, by saying that we're praying to God and so on and so on. But I mean, when we diffuse the urgencies of the story, then we're left in presence, I believe. And then that presence makes our life what? It's an opportunity for life to be more appropriate, because we're seeing what's happening with less overlays, and we're actually seeing more of the truth of it. Like even the three of us here, I believe that we can feel each other's heart, and we can really feel each other. And whatever that means, that's a spiritual speak. But
I like you both. I can't see into your soul or your heart. I feel I just like you. So there, I can say that. I cannot see into your soul. I cannot see into your heart.
Just see into your own soul. It may be a reflection of mine.
I believe that's true. That to a certain degree, but that's just a belief. I don't know if I could say any more about it.
Richard,
what do you think? Tell us a few things, and we'll pull it to a close. Give us a few final arguments.
I don't know. There's a question, though, I would like to ask is, what happens to the story after it's been unplugged? After we have accessed presence, or after the inquiry has been made and presence is grown or is growing? What happens to the story? Is it still there? Does it go away?
I'd like to answer that, you know, and actually that's exciting, because we're living a story, and we say we're in a collective. And we're saying that a lot of that the collective story we didn't author. Somebody authored it for us. Our forebears, right, authored the story. In fact, we read scriptures because our forebears had a story, and we try to emulate that story, right? And what happens when you look into the story and see that it's, in a way, kind of arbitrary, and a lot of it is the collective, and a lot of it might be the collective resonating through our experiences as a youth. It was still the collective that was resonating and kind of coming to the surface through our own experiences, which were similar to those original stories. And when we see that those are just stories, and we see that they're actually constructed of words, of distinctions, and then we can start to make our own distinctions, and we can say, well, what if I'm a human mechanism operating on a story, and each story has a feeling that ricochets through me. Well, why don't I try to be the author myself or with my friends? You know, the three of us could say, let's make a story. And we call that story an opportunity. Let's just say it's an opportunity for a context for opportunity. Let's say a context we can build one, and we can create, and we can say, oh yeah, those are just thoughts, but anyhow, they're thoughts that might make a difference on the world of thought. You know, and the world of thought would be how humans society works. You know, let's just include more people somehow, or we'll make our own stories, and then I think that's the power of it, because there's a great power in the story. We're all plunging along in this life, trying to get our story tied together, you know, like whether we're working or whether we're trying to satisfy our boss, or whether we're trying to bring greater health to the world, or we're trying to raise our kids better, or take care of our spouse, or whatever we're doing in this world. In a way, we feel it's a necessity that we didn't create. You know, if we had to write it, we would have wrote it different, the script. So then when the story starts to dissipate or to be seen through, then we can say, well, let me put a chapter in that story, right? I want it to be this way, where I love people, and where I'm more open, and where I'm not so scared to go out and tell people that. And then maybe I'll even get on the internet and just broadcast myself, right? Or, you know, let's talk about being a couple, or what have we learned about living with a spouse, you know? Or how can people, you know, why do they have to get divorced so many times? Or, you know, or any place that we like. We could talk about orphans, or we could talk about kids in third world countries, or we could talk about food, or we could talk about, you know, we could pick up something and build our own conversation and call it a conversation for possibility. You know, it's not really here yet, you know. But
so you're saying we are...
I'm committed to that. I could commit myself to that. Yeah, please.
So the energy of that I got was that we are realizing our potential, and we are becoming floating fields of intention. And by the internet, we are almost changing the collective intention purely from the place where we are. You in Australia, Susan in America, me in UK. And at this moment,
and
our
it's done
intentions
through,
are colliding.
It's done through language, but also an important part of that language is that it's built on no thing. So that the spaciousness that spiritual teaching brings us to is the platform for creativity. And so that it's not to be discarded. It's not either or. It's not just thoughts or otherwise just no thought in vastness. It's both, because the vastness is the field of creation, and then the creation is the word. And then, but that word is just built on intention. It's not built on residue. And how about that?
You have some great words that are kind of out there with no real definition. That we need another conversation to kind of like settle this down onto ground. I'm a Taurus.
Yes.
It's so nice talking to you guys.
It was very nice meeting you, Susan.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
funny, right? Is this what I expected? Well, actually, yeah, kind of.
What a wonderful conversation. I'm really
we'll
thrilled by the three of our energies.
But there was something I really want to, I'm a woman and I like to have the last word. It gives me pleasure. And you know how that feels. But I can't think of what I wanted to say to you, so I'll have to like type it or something. Okay. I love you both. Beautiful. Bye. I'm late.
I love you both.
I love
You're
you
beautiful.
both. Perfect.
All right, Richard. Thank you. Thank you.